This is John Bunn, who endured a 27-year wrongful conviction for murder.
I'm an innocent man, Your Honor, and I have always been an innocent man.
John Bunn, a resident of Brooklyn, New York, was arrested at the young age of 14 by NYPD Detective Louis Garcella. He endured 16 years in prison and 11 years on parole while persistently fighting to prove his innocence. Eventually, his conviction was overturned due to the misconduct of Detective Scarcella and the absence of probable cause for his arrest.
I want y'all to know that y'all convicted and had a wrong man in prison.
After an arduous 27-year battle to clear his name, John Bunn is finally exonerated.
I want to say thank you, Your Honor, because in 27 years, I've been fighting for my life.
Before leaving the courtroom, John Bunn shares a significant moment with the judge. John Bunn files a lawsuit against the city of New York and Detective Scarcella. This is Marquith Lloyd, who was convicted of murdering a police officer in Orlando, Florida.
I'm raising a relationship for somebody else I have absolutely don't know nothing about, and they frame me.
Marquith Lloyd was already evading the police after murdering his former girlfriend, who was pregnant with his child. A month later, Lloyd was spotted in a Walmart, where he crossed paths with Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton. A shootout ensued when Lieutenant Clayton attempted to arrest him, resulting in her tragic death. Lloyd fled again, leading to a 9-day manhunt, before he was eventually apprehended. During his arrest, he suffered the loss of his left eye while attempting to escape. In court, Lloyd took the stand, claiming that he believed everyone was out to kill him.
And I was just reacting, Mayor. I was just reacting. Even when they opened the door, I just reacted. I fired 2 shots, I just reacted.
The jury delivered a guilty verdict for Marquith Lloyd.
It really hurts deep down inside.
Lieutenant Clayton's sister gives a powerful victim impact statement.
She stood in the place as my mother when I didn't have one. I truly miss my sister. I truly miss her.
In a decisive moment, Lloyd learns that the jury has unanimously recommended the death sentence.
We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Marquith Lloyd, should be sentenced to death.
Lloyd appears to mouth something to the public, and shortly after, he has an outburst.
You've been trying to kill me. You've been trying to frame me for murder.
All right, why don't we remove Mr. Lloyd from the courtroom?
The judge concurred with the jury's decision and sentenced Lloyd to death. He is currently incarcerated, awaiting his execution. This is Scott Nelson, who is facing first-degree murder charges for killing a nanny in Orlando, Florida.
You committed the worst possible crime.
Scott Nelson, who had recently completed a 25-year prison sentence for a bank robbery, found himself facing first-degree murder charges. After losing his painting job, Nelson planned another robbery. He broke into a house, kidnapped a nanny at knife point, and forced her into the trunk of a car. Nelson proceeded to withdraw cash from an ATM, drove to a secluded area, and fatally stabbed her. He abandoned the body and the vehicle before eventually being apprehended. During the trial, Nelson argued that the government bore responsibility for his actions.
You bought zip ties?
Yes, I did.
You bought duct tape?
That'd be correct.
You bought a knife?
I sure did. I bought that material because I had a plan in mind of how I was going to survive being thrown on the street again for what, the third or was it the fourth time by the government? And you know, you kick a dog enough times, they tend to bite back, and really, they just don't care anymore.
Nelson maintains a stoic demeanor while testifying and eventually confesses to the murder without displaying any emotion.
Somebody was going to pay for how you've been treated.
That is very accurate.
Who killed Jennifer Fulford?
I did.
During the penalty phase, Nelson took the stand to share his remarks.
How has your mental health been affected by your previous incarceration?
I am a homicidal maniac.
In the end, Nelson was convicted of first-degree murder and received a life sentence in prison. This is Alan McCarty, who was arrested and charged for making death threats against a judge in a child custody case. The judge ruled against McCarty, resulting in the loss of his children. His disruptive and erratic behavior persisted during his court appearrances.
My daddy owns the building and I look like a f***ing idiot, huh? Brought your dress today, you little f***ing prick. You wanna take my kids from me and act like that? You and that f***. Shut the f*** up, I'm trying to think over here.
After being found guilty of the initial threats against a judge, McCarty's case proceeds to the sentencing phase.
What a bunch of guys, you stupid piece of then also. You threatened my life, you idiot. You back room. Suck my No, I'm not standing. Not resisting. I'm not resisting. I'm just not standing up. I'm not standing. I don't have to stand.
McCarty is relocated to a separate room where he can observe the court proceedings through a one-way glass. Despite being separated, he persists in causing disruptions and disturbances. McCarty receives a 20-year prison sentence, and the judge imposes an additional 10-day sentence in response to his disruptive behavior during the court proceedings. This is Darrell Brooks, who has been found guilty of causing the deaths of 6 people and injuring numerous others in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Brooks drove his SUV into a Christmas parade at high speeds, reportedly exceeding 30 miles per hour. The prosecution argued that his reckless driving spree was intentional.
He plowed through 68 different people. He kept going until he got to the end, and there was no more bodies to hit. It was intentional.
After being arrested and charged, Brooks opted to act as his own legal representative in court.
If you are allowed to represent yourself in this case, sir, you will not have attorneys assisting you. They are gone from this case. Do you understand that?
I think I will probably be better served representing myself.
During the trial, Brooks was repeatedly removed from the courtroom due to frequent interruptions and outbursts. His true personality emerged when he burst into laughter during a witness testimony.
He told Erica that he was gonna find her and he was gonna kill her.
Upon returning to the courtroom, Brooks has an outburst triggered by his dissatisfaction with how the district attorney pronounced the word defendant.
I would like to provide the defendant and the court.
So that had to be said. The defendant. I got one ear that work and I heard that.
This is to benefit you, that you understand
Ain't none of this
your
to benefit
witness.
me.
Brooks, visibly frustrated, chooses to engage in a tense stare down with the judge.
I need to take a break. This man right now is having a stare down with me. It's very disrespectful. He pounded his fist. Frankly, it makes me scared.
The jury swiftly delivers a guilty verdict on all 76 charges against Brooks, resulting in him receiving 6 life sentences and an additional 700+ years in prison. This is Michael Brady, who orchestrated a prison escape that tragically led to the deaths of 4 prison workers at the Pasco Tank Correctional Institution in North Carolina.
I stabbed him like 4 to 8 times. I hit Jeffrey Howe until he stopped moving. I don't know how many times I hit him with a hammer.
Brady, already serving a 4-year sentence for attempted murder after shooting at a North Carolina state trooper, was facing an additional 24 years in prison. However, 4 years into his sentence, Brady, along with 3 other inmates, brutally murdered 4 prison workers using hammers and scissors.
That man, Michael Brady, beat that man, George Midget, like he was trying to bust concrete.
Brady's escape attempt was foiled when he tried to climb over a fence and was apprehended at gunpoint.
It was like a bloodbath, and I stepped in between Jeffrey and Wendy, and I slid trying to get in because the whole elevator floor was nothing but blood.
During the trial, prosecutors presented arguments suggesting that Brady was the mastermind behind the attack, emphasizing his lack of remorse for the killings.
We know who originated the plan. We know who led the plan.
After being found guilty, Mr. Brady now has an opportunity to take the stand during his sentencing.
I'm up here to tell the truth. You can ask me anything you want. I'm gonna tell the truth. Whether it hurts me, whether it helps me, I don't care about that.
You don't believe you're crazy, do you?
No, I don't think I'm crazy, no.
And you do know the difference between right and wrong?
Yes.
So you know murder is wrong?
Murder is a different name for a death, but yes.
Your freedom meant more than their lives.
Yes.
And now, the judge announces the jury's recommendation.
Jury unanimously recommending that the defendant be sentenced to death.
Brady appears utterly devoid of emotion, and subsequently, the judge concurs with the jury's decision to impose the death penalty. Currently, he remains incarcerated in Colorado, awaiting his execution. This is Julia Smith Riley, appearing in a Cincinnati, Ohio courtroom, accused of confessing to a robbery that resulted in the death of a 20-year-old woman and severe injuries to her boyfriend. Portia Brooks and Aaron Martin were in their car when Smith Riley, accompanied by 2 others, approached them with the intention to rob. Upon learning that Martin had no cash, he was shot in the head, causing permanent brain damage. Smith Riley also fired at Brooks, resulting in her death 3 days later.
Sorry. Go back and win. I just want to come up with this.
This is somebody that feels genuine remorse. This is somebody that thinks about this every day, and he knows that he can't go back in time and undo what he did.
Now, Portia Brooks's mother delivers a powerful victim impact statement.
But he killed me mentally, emotionally. He killed my identity as a mother of 3, as a family of 4.
Now it is Brooks' sister's turn to speak.
I have to deal with life without Portia, so he should deal with life without parole.
These are the final moments before Jaleel Smith Riley receives the devastating news that he will never be able to return home again.
Defendant serve a term of life without parole. As to count 4 for the offense of attempted murder.
This is Martez Abram, who has been found guilty on 2 counts of murder for the killings of 2 Walmart employees in South Haven, Mississippi. Abram was previously employed at the Walmart but faced suspension after being found with a knife in the store. On the day of his suspension, he returned to the store armed with multiple weapons and opened fire, resulting in the deaths of store managers Anthony Brown and Brandon Gales.
He was laying on the ground with his eyes open, and I ran up to him, and I looked at him. I said, Anthony, honey, please say KC one more time.
He also shot an officer who fortunately survived the attack thanks to wearing a bulletproof vest.
Once I got out of my vehicle, I heard gunshots, and I felt the pressure of the bullet hit my back.
He was apprehended at the scene, and now in court, Abram confesses to all of the crimes he committed.
That's you, isn't it, sir?
Yes.
Look at it, please, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Gale is on the floor going down at this point, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay, and that's you shooting him, right?
Yes.
Look at the screen, sir.
Yes.
That's you shooting him?
Yes.
And you admit that you shot him in cold blood?
Yes.
You shot him again, didn't you?
Yes.
After that, you went back to the toilet paper aisle, didn't you?
Yes.
Now, it is the wife of one of the victims who delivers a powerful victim impact statement.
You took Anthony from me on the exact day, 20 years earlier, that we had our first date.
Now, it is the crucial moment when the judge will determine Abram's fate.
In count 1, I will sentence you to death. Count 2, you will be sentenced to death. In count 3, you will be sentenced to life in the penitentiary.
As Abram receives the news that he has been sentenced to death, he maintains a solemn silence. He now resides on death row, awaiting his execution. This is Franklin Williams, found guilty of numerous felonies, including armed robberies and eluding police in Cleveland, Ohio.
Again, I'm going to interrupt. Mr. Williams, listen to me. I'm going to gag you in 1 second.
Williams engaged in 3 separate armed robberies before initiating a high-speed police pursuit. He was eventually apprehended, tried, and convicted. However, during his sentencing, Williams continuously disregarded the judge's warnings, persistently talking.
Do not let me. That means zip it right now. You trying to? Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. That's a violation of the hippo law, Judge. Here we go.
As a consequence, the judge ordered Williams' mouth to be securely taped shut.
Spit on, attempt to bite, or injure any of my deputies. You're gonna have a bad day.
That's what it is.
During a subsequent court appearance, Williams has an important message to convey, both to the judge and the cameras.
Freedom of speech, no duct tape, with the hashtag.
Despite numerous interruptions, the judge proceeds to deliver Williams' sentence.
Faced a potential maximum consecutive sentence of 134 years, I ordered a 24-year sentence.
After initially receiving a 24-year prison sentence, Williams' case took a twist when the judge apologized for the use of duct tape and subsequently overturned the sentence. A new judge was appointed, who then sentenced Williams to 33 years of imprisonment. This is Randall Moore, who is currently facing 3 life sentences for committing crimes against his former wife, Therese Ann Lynch. Lynch had left Moore and obtained a protective order against him. In response, Moore kidnapped and killed his estranged wife. Officer Todd Rowland, who responded to the distress call from the apartment, was shot and injured by Moore.
Okay, 303 Adams been hit, officer down. Suspect armed with 20 shells. Advises nobody come to the door as he will shoot again.
Shortly after, Moore engaged in a phone conversation with a 911 dispatcher, where he elaborated on his motives for his actions.
I didn't want to do any of this.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, all I wanted was my son. I just wanted to see my 7-month-old baby. That's all I cared about.
Not long after Moore surrendered, and Officer Rowland underwent hand surgery. As the verdict is announced, Moore responds with a subtle nod, showing little emotion.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of kidnapping in the first degree, guilty of sexual abuse in the first degree, guilty of attempt to commit murder.
During Atmore's sentencing, Lynch's mother delivers a powerful victim impact statement expressing the profound impact of the crimes on her and her family.
Did to my daughter, Tresanne Marie Lynch, was evil, hateful, and despicable. You are now dead and rotting and repulsive to me.
Read the journal she wrote. She hated you.
Thank you, Judge.
She hated you.
Thank you.
You're a loser.
Moore adamantly refuses to apologize for his actions, stating that he feels no remorse for the tragic events that unfolded.
And I'll tell you point blank, I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Tresanne's death. It could have all been prevented. All you had to do is let me see my kid. Now you're never going to see her again.
But now, it is time for the judge to make a decision or deliver a ruling.
If anybody didn't know what a piece of work you were before you start talking, they know it now. The court doesn't allow me to punish you any more than I'm doing now. If I could, I would.
Moore received a combined sentence of 3 life terms in addition to 25 years for the charge of attempted murder. This is Erica Butts and Shanita Cunningham facing charges of homicide by child abuse in Summerville, South Carolina. Butts, who was the best friend of the child's mother, was entrusted with caring for the 3-year-old toddler for a 2-week period. Tragically, the child passed away due to severe injuries that indicated weeks of torture, coinciding with the time she spent under the care of Butts and her then-partner, Cunningham.
What must have been the excruciating sounds that came from that child is more than disconcerting to this court.
After the conviction of both women, it is now time for the judge to pronounce their sentences.
The court finds it appropriate that each be sentenced to the State Department of Corrections for a period of life.
They have just been sentenced to life imprisonment for their crimes. Butts and Cunningham are currently serving their life sentences in separate prisons, as they were incarcerated for their respective roles in the crimes committed. This is Keith Ferguson from Kalkaska, Michigan, who is facing a court trial for 12 felony charges, including kidnapping and murder. Ferguson, who was 40 years old at the time, was involved in a heated divorce dispute with his wife, Tiffany Ferguson. During the argument, he violently assaulted her and tragically shot her in front of their 4 children. Subsequently, he took the children to Tiffany's parents' house, where he fatally shot his father-in-law. After fleeing the scene, Ferguson sought refuge in a nearby residence, taking the homeowner hostage and barricading himself inside. Following a tense 7-hour standoff, Ferguson was eventually apprehended by the authorities.
The defendant has already murdered multiple people, and fled, and has taken hostages.
During Ferguson's court appearance, his demeanor and lack of remorse regarding the situation left everyone perplexed and astounded.
All right, Mr. Ferguson, can I get you to stand up there at the podium, please? All right, I need to have you raise your right hand for me. Okay, all right.
Pull me back my
Okay, stop.
In addition, during Ferguson's sentencing, Tiffany's best friend delivers a poignant victim impact statement, expressing her belief that she had always feared Keith would harm his wife.
I knew one day he would kill her. She would always reply, "He loves his kids too much. He won't kill me. He loved them so much, he murdered their mother and grandfather."
When questioned about his children, Ferguson shockingly expresses no desire to ever see or communicate with them again. The judge responded by saying,
"You may not meet the clinical definition of insanity, but there's clearly something fundamentally wrong with you."
Ferguson received a life sentence without the chance of parole for his heinous crimes.
I'll see y'all in hell.
This is David Ranta, who endured 22 years of incarceration for a murder he did not commit in Brooklyn, New York. Ranta was arrested by Detective Louis Scarcella after being identified as the shooter in a police lineup orchestrated by Scarcella. However, decades later, a key witness came forward and revealed that the detective had provided him with instructions on whom to pick in the lineup. There was no physical evidence linking Ranta to the crime, and the evidence presented during his trial was purportedly fabricated. Ranta was subsequently convicted and sentenced to 37.5 years to life in prison. After spending over 2 decades behind bars, the former witnesses admitted to being coerced into testifying against Ranta. Finally, the moment arrives when his conviction is overturned.
Mr. Ranta, to say that I'm sorry for what you have endured would be an understatement and grossly inadequate, but I say it to you anyway. The defendant's motion to vacate the judgment of conviction is granted.
As his handcuffs were taken off, David Ranta embraced his family tightly, carrying all his belongings on his back, symbolizing his newfound freedom after years of wrongful imprisonment.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Walking out as a free man following his release, David Ranta reportedly received a substantial sum of $2 million from the state and a $6.4 million settlement from the city of New York as compensation for his wrongful conviction and decades spent in prison.